What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Boys Do Sports. Today we got Week 10 starts and sits and streaming defenses. Let's get into it. Starts, quarterback Jared Goff. The Lions lost a divisional game last week. The last time that happened, in Week 1, they came out in Week 2 and smashed the Bears, and Goff threw 5 touchdowns. I expect them to do the same against a terrible Commanders defense who allow the 4th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and they just got killed by Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Running back DeAndre Swift. I know, after Kyle Monongai's breakout last week, Swift knows he has to play this week. He cannot lose this starting job. It seems like he's lost a lot of starting jobs in the past. But it's still going to be a 50-50 split, and that's good for Swift, honestly. He does better when he doesn't have the full workload. He does plenty of work on just 50% of snaps. Since their Week 5 bye, Swift has been a top 6 fantasy running back twice while playing less than 60% of the snaps in each of those games. Plus, the Giants allow the second most fantasy points per game to running backs, and this is going to be a shootout, so plenty of points. Wide receiver in the same game, Wan'Dale Robinson. He has 27 targets over the last 3 weeks as the Giants wide receiver 1. This game has shootout potential, like I said, with DeAndre Swift, with 2 bad defenses, and the Bears allow the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. You are pretty much guaranteed 8 catches for 40 yards with them, and could be more like in the Dallas game. So we'll see how that goes. Tight end Dalton Schultz. It's a bad day when we're relying on Dalton Schultz, but we lost Tucker Kraft. We got to go somewhere. He's got a backup quarterback, and if you add that with a tight end safety blanket, that equals fantasy success. He has had at least 5 catches in 5 of the last 6 games and at least 60 yards in 3 of the last 4. The Jaguars allow the second most fantasy points per game to tight ends. Another sleeper start like Alec Pierce. I really like Alec Pierce against the Falcons. London game, so if you need a good start, I'd go Alec Pierce. Let's jump into our sits. Quarterback Trevor Lawrence. I was kind of high on him going into the year, but it's just not been good. The offense has been just hit and miss. The Texans have been a nightmare for quarterbacks, allowing only 12.5 fantasy points per game. BTJ is most likely going to miss the game, and Travis Hunter is on IR. This is going to be a low-scoring defensive game, so not a lot of fantasy points, especially for quarterbacks. And Trevor Lawrence's points are kind of bumped up by rushing touchdowns, which is an anomaly for him. Running back Breece Hall. I know he just had a big blow-up game, but I don't know. I expect him to get traded away after they trade Sauce and Quentin Williams. He's scheduled to be a free agent this offseason and honestly just doesn't have much to play for. He's shown who he is. He is a stud running back in this league, just on a very poor team. So he doesn't have to prove anything. And the Browns allow the second fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. So I honestly just wouldn't be surprised if Breece Hall just, gets hurt in this game and doesn't play the rest of the season. For sure, trade him away if you can. Wide receiver Jacoby Myers. He just got traded to the Jaguars and gets to play the Texans, who allow the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers. He has got to get some reps with Lawrence before we can expect a good connection. And there are much better options on the waiver this week. Like I said earlier, Alec Pierce. Lots of names out there. But Jacoby Myers, he's got to get up to the speed with the playbook and everything. I just wouldn't expect a big game. Tight end, another waiver wire guy, Luke Musgrave. He is now the tight end one for the Packers, but the Eagles allow the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends. The Packers have been super run heavy, utilizing 2 running backs, and honestly will probably run the ball 35 times this week against the Eagles. That's all for starts and sits. Let's get into a couple defenses. Defenses are hard this week. Obvious starters, the Texans versus the Jags. And Jags versus Texans isn't a bad idea either. Lions versus the Commanders. Browns versus the Jets. And Jets versus the Browns is a sneaky start too. Even though they just lost 2 star defenders, the Browns still just have a hard time scoring points. Bills versus Dolphins. Seahawks versus Cardinals. I know the Cardinals just went off on Dallas, but everyone who plays against Dallas has a weaker game the next week. Don't know if the offense just gets so tired of scoring points. I don't know. I've only got one less owned team to start, because everyone picked up all the good teams, so everyone's pretty owned. But Panthers versus the Saints, they're still pretty under-owned, so use them if you have to. And a highly owned defense to avoid, just got one this week, the Patriots versus the Bucks. I know they've had a good stretch of games, but Bucks coming off the bye, this could be a good bounce-back game for them, even though the Patriots defense is pretty solid. But yeah, guys, that's all for my starts and sits. Good luck this week with your fantasy matchups, and thanks for watching.